Hi, everybody. Alan Arnett here with another podcast and the blog on alanarnett.com. It is Wednesday, September the 18th, 2024. And this podcast is going to be the first of a nine-part series on climbing the seven summits. Of course, we know the seven summits are the highest peak on the seven continents, but there's technically six physical continents and there's seven summits. Okay. Well, we're going to get into all of that in this episode, then go through all the seven summits in upcoming weeks, about once a week for the next 8 weeks. But this is part one. But before we get into this, let's talk a little bit about what's going on in Nepal and Tibet for the Himalayan climbing season here in September, autumn of 24. Well, Manaslu is the mountain. You know, Manaslu has become the fall Everest. In the springtime, everybody goes and climbs Mount Everest, and in the fall, everybody goes and climbs Mount Manaslu or Choyu. It used to be that Choyu was the choice of everybody, but the Chinese have recently increased the pricing there through fees and other regulations. Also, there's also limitations on how you can use oxygen and also experience that you have to have. I'll go into that briefly in a second. So most people now are choosing their first 8,000 or not 14 or boy, there's a 40 and slip for somebody who lives in Colorado, but their first 8,000 are to be Manaslu in Nepal as opposed to Choyu in Tibet. Already this year, there have been 308 permits issued to foreigners. China is dominating by a vast margin with 67 permits issued to Chinese. The U.S. comes in a distant second at 33 rather. And then there's about six other countries that have over 10, and those include Russia, India, France, Japan, Canada, Iran, Switzerland, UK, and Germany. But overall, they've issued about 340 permits for all of the mountains, for about 10 mountains across Nepal this year. And that includes some other 8,000 meter mountains. And that includes other 8,000 meter mountains in Nepal, Maklu with a 4-person team, and Dhaulagiri with a 5-person team. Over in Tibet, there's people climbing Choyu from the Tibetan side for the first time in about 4 years. And also Shishapangma has been opened back up. It's attracting a lot of people that are trying to complete climbing all 14 of the 8,000 meter mountains. So there's several people that are trying to get that done, including the 18-year-old Nima Ringa Sherpa. And if he makes it, he'll have completed all of them at a very young age of 18. And plus, there's a handful of other people also going for it. There's an Everest ski expedition on the north side. Last year, the same team, Jimmy Chin, Conrad Anker, Jim Morrison, they tried to get into Tibet, but they got refused entry. This year, it looks like that they're actually going to be able to do it. They've got the right permits to ski. Last year, they didn't have the right permit to ski. That's why they got rejected. Politics and permits, what can you say? But this year, looks like Conrad's not with them, but Mark Fisher, as a photographer, is with a team of Tibetans and Nepali Sherpas. Also, Mingma David Sherpa is going to be with them. So that should be exciting to watch. If they want to ski down the Hornbeam Kular, that's going to be amazing to watch. So, you know, Manaslu is the mountain that has attracted a lot of publicity in recent years because that most people since around 2010 thought they reached the true summit, but in fact, they were at the 4 summit, just a smidge shy of the true summit across a very heavily dangerous ridge that's very heavily corniced. It was deemed way too dangerous, so most people actually thought that they had summited Manaslu, but in fact, it had only hit the 4 summit. And then a couple of years ago, they found an alternate way to drop down and go back up. The rope team has summited today on September the 19th. I don't know what route they took, if they took the going up the ridge and down and over and then back up again, or they went across the ridge proper. That information will come out soon as we get more reports from the regular people that are summiting as opposed to the summit team. Talked a little bit about the fees going on in Tibet. The Chinese have really done a number of changes here recently, ostensibly to make climbing in China easier or safer, not easier, but safer. Number one is that they are now requiring the use of supplemental oxygen for anyone who climbs above 7,000 meters. So if you just throw an oxygen bottle in your pack and don't use it, you'll still, I don't know what the penalty is, but theoretically, you're required to actually use the oxygen, not just carry it. Also, if you're going to go climb a 6,000-meter mountain in Tibet, then you needed to have summited a 5,000-meter mountain, a 7,000-meter mountain, you need to get a 6,000-meter, and an 8,000-meter, you need to have a 7,000-meter for experience. I love these ideas, not the oxygen one, but the experience one I really like a lot. They're also requiring that every permit holder climb with a certified guide, but there's no specification on if that's an IFMGA certified guide or the Chinese equivalent or a Nepali equivalent, but they just say that you have to climb with a guide. So regular outfitters like Alpenglow, Adrian Bollinger, who know how to climb and navigate that environment very well, are experts in these areas. So those would be the type of a company that I would seek out if you want to go climb in Tibet coming up these days. Adventure Consultants is over on Choilyu, climbing from the Tibetan side. There's a Russian team that's going to be trying to go up from the Nepal side on Choilyu. This is a route that's very rarely done. Only about 21 people have done it thus far. So Russians did it back in 1991. So hats off to them for doing something kind of out there and over the top. It's really cool. Last thing in terms of the general update before we get to the 7 summits, Pakistan has increased their permit fees across the board. So only looking at K2, which tends to get most of the attraction these days, they've increased the permit fee on a per person basis to $5,000 US. This is arguably triple what it was. It was around $2,000. I think it's a good thing. There has been a lot of smack talk out there saying that people are no longer going to go to Pakistan because their permit fees are too high. And I kind of say get a grip on it, because Everest is now going to be $15,000 per person starting next year in 2025. So still K2 is going to be $5,000 versus $15,000. And I think if this makes some of the Nepali companies no longer go and guide there because they have to now pay for every Sherpa they bring in, that extra $3,000, then I say that's good, because it's going to build the Pakistani infrastructure. And there's some very, very good teams and guide companies in Pakistan, but they just don't have the volume of business. So hopefully this will steer more business towards them. It'll allow them to create more skills of high altitude porters is kind of what they're called, but they're basically high altitude climbers that support the permit holders. And I think it's really good for the tourism industry in the Northern Territories in Pakistan. So good on them for going ahead and do this and putting in a few more rules. They're limiting each team to 20 members. Of course, you can easily get around that by having 3 or 4 permits under the one guide operation. So you can still have 60 people on 3 teams, just to be 3 different permits. That's kind of a red herring in my mind. But the money is a real thing. They've also increased the requirement for insurance for the high altitude porters and also the low altitude porters, and for the liaison officers, which is kind of a joke, but nonetheless, that's what it is. Okay, that's pretty cool. All good stuff happening this autumn. Wish best of luck to everybody, whether you're trying to climb Shishapangma, Choilyu, Everest, or Manaslu. Best of luck to everybody. And I think the floodgates are going to open up now that the ropes are to the summit on Manaslu. So we should start seeing a lot of summits happening here over the next few days, a couple of weeks. Weather so far has been pretty good in the Himalayas. There's always going to be a day or two that's going to be pretty bad, but overall, not too bad. Okay, episode 1 of climbing the 7 summits. As everybody knows, the 7 summits are the highest peak on each one of the 7 continents. Dick Bass, who found his Snowbird ski resort in Utah, came up with the idea in the mid-1980s to go climb the highest peak on each one of the 7 continents. And at that time, the 7 continents were pretty clear to him. It was North America, South America, Africa, Asia, Europe, and then Australia. So those were the 7 continents that he chose. And sure enough, in 1983, he got he got 6 of the 7. So he got Aconcagua, Kilimanjaro, Elbrus in Russia, Denali, Vinson, and Kosciuszko in Australia. But hold the presses. Then Canadian Patrick Morrow, he said, hang on, that is not Kosciuszko in Australia, but rather is Carstensz Pyramid on New Guinea. That's the highest because it's part of the same overall tectonic plate. It's not necessarily on the continent of Australia, but it's connected to it by the landmass. Therefore, Carstensz Pyramid is actually higher than Kosciuszko. And so that should be the seventh summit. And he, in fact, did complete all seven, including Karstens, by the way. So now we have 7 summits. And the Reinhold Messner, the demigod of mountaineering, he agreed with Morrow. And so he said not only was he going to climb all 8, but he was going to do it without oxygen. And he completed that in 1986. So you've got a little bit of a controversy here. You've got 2 different lists. You have the Bass list, which ends with Kosciuszko, and then what's commonly today called the Messner list. It probably should be called the Morrow list, but it's called the Messner list, which is all 8, which includes Kosciuszko plus Karstens pyramid. Relative to these continents, if you look at the physical continents, it's the ones I went through earlier, the 6 of them. But then Europe is considered a peninsula of Asia, Eurasia. However, politically, Europe is different than Asia. Therefore, you've got the highest in Asia is Mount Everest, and the highest in Europe is actually Elbrus, which is part of Russia. Are you confused yet? But then you say, well, what about Mont Blanc? Mont Blanc is the highest in Western Europe, and it's on the border with Italy and with France. So you could argue that there's actually 8, perhaps 9, 7 summits if you include Karstens Pyramid and Mont Blanc. So we've already gone through what happened with Kosciuszko and Karstens Pyramid. So now you've got there's 7 continents with 9 peaks, which are all under the auspices of the 7 summits. Wow. So what we're going to be doing over the next several weeks is taking each one of these and talking about what it takes to climb these mountains. And some of these are simple walk-ups, like a Kosciuszko in Australia. It's actually a ski resort. And that's one of the reasons why Karstens Pyramid probably is it definitely is. It's a more technical, a more demanding physical climb than the walk-up of Kosciuszko. I've done both. So what we're going to do, we're going to start off with the lowest peak and work our way all the way up to the highest. So next week we'll start off with Kosciuszko, and we'll end up in about 9 weeks with Mount Everest. And I'll actually throw in Mont Blanc in there just to be complete. So now we can talk about the 7 summits. So I hope you follow along. It should be a lot of fun, educational. And then after I do that, maybe we'll talk about the second 7 summits, which is the second highest mountain on each one of the 7 continents. And there's actually 8 of those also. Okay, it's going to be a lot of fun. I hope you enjoy it, and good to be back. Climb on. This is Alan, and remember, memories are everything.